Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to take another look at making a hub. Except in this tutorial I'm going to be focusing on the mechanics of making a hub, the code that goes on behind the scenes in order to transport players to the different game worlds that you want to offer them. So a couple of prerequisites. I'm going to need to use advanced mode because I'm going to do some coding in order to send players around. And you might need a hub or something to practice in already. And the hub needs to be published as well as the game you want to transport players to. If it's not published, then you won't be able to test it, although you can kind of see whether it might work or not using the console behind the scenes. Okay, let's get started then. So in order to teleport players, I need something for them to do. And in the last tutorial I did, when I was talking about the design and some suggestions to do with designing a hub, I did mention that it would be worth making sure it's an active thing that the player does. So they have to interact with something and not like a trigger for them to walk into and then randomly get transported and surprise them. And yeah, essentially you want to make sure that the player definitely knows what they're doing. So in order to tell the player what they will do, we need to use some kind of prompt. Unfortunately, there's a prompt package already in the community. This prompts one here, if you click on Crayta packages, it's the prompts package there. So make sure that you install that package. And the next step is to go to your user template and add the user prompt view. You can see I've already added it, but you can do that by clicking on the user, entity, create child script folder, and go to the user prompts view. What that does is it essentially takes care of showing these prompts in the bottom right corner for my players. Once I have that, the next step is to start coding. So I'm going to click on the thing, whatever your portal might look like. Mine is this portal here, and it's simply made up of this sort of game card with a locator attached to that game card and then a widget attached to that locator. And then I actually have this prompter, which is another game card, and that is invisible. So that's sitting in front of all of this as like a layer to capture the interact events, just in case the player was to, I don't know, accidentally interact with, this voxel mesh. It's to avoid having to hook up lots and lots of interact events. I'm just using this invisible thing here to capture as many events as possible. So I've got my game card and I'm going to add a script. The thing that I'm going to capture the interact events, I'm going to add a script to that. So let's go entity, add script, new script. And for this purpose, it's going to be called demo teleport script. Now let's go into that script and start editing. So in order to tell the user, going back to that prompts thing we were talking about, in order to tell the user what is going to happen in that little bottom right corner, let's add a prompt message. So I'm going to call this a property, and it's going to be called, because I'm going to use a property because it might be different for the different portals around my game world, whether it's going to teleport them to. So this is going to be called prompt message, like that. And the type is a text. It's not a string, it's a text. And this is because it's going to be displayed to the user in a little text widget. Okay, and what I want to do is for this to be used, let's have a look at that in a little bit more depth. So for that to be used, let's look at the script. If we go to the user, this prompt script is what's essentially going to be trying to get hold of whatever words I'm using to tell the player what to do. And it does that by running this get interact prompt function on whatever the user can currently interact with. So let's copy that and let's create a new function. Function demo teleport script get interact prompt. And I believe it passes through our prompts here. And then essentially we just do prompts dot, and then whatever prompt we want to use. So mine's going to be the interact prompt. Prompts.interact equals self.properties.prompt message. And in order to format the string properly, we're going to use format. And so that takes this text and it turns it into something legible. Okay. So now that we've done that, we can stop editing that template, go here to our portal again, to the thing that we're going to interact with, wherever our demo teleport script is. And this is going to say on it, well, let's have a look. If I just run that now, F5 to build and run. Let's run over and see whether that's hooked up correctly. So if you look in the bottom right corner, you can see it says press E2, and that will be context aware. So essentially if they're using a controller or they've mapped their controls differently, it will say the correct button there. But we need to finish off what it's asking, or what it's telling our player. So I want to say press E to travel to stop the furnace, which is the name of this game. So let's just finish that off. Press E2, and then in here, I am going to write in this prompt message, travel to stop the furnace. Now it'll capitalize that automatically for us. But if I've done the code incorrectly and I don't have any errors, which I don't, then we should see that that now prompts our user. There. Press E to travel to stop the furnace. So giving the player as much information before they decide to commit to something as possible is a really good thing for design. And it's also the first step, I think, in developing this portal. The next step is to actually teleport our player to a game. So in order to do that, we're going to run a teleport function. Let's create a new function, demo teleport script, teleport, like that. And in between the brackets, this is going to be called from an interact event. And so whoever just interacted with the teleport will be passed as an argument in between these brackets. So let's capture that person, player. So now whoever has interacted with this portal will be stored in player. To send that player somewhere, we actually need to get hold of the user that's controlling the player. Remember, the player is their character in Crayta, and the user is essentially the person sitting behind that. So can't send their player there because that player only exists in this game world. We need to send the user there where they'll spawn a new player in whatever game they arrive in. So player get user brackets colon go to game. And if I just hover over this, you can see it says user go to game, and there's two possibilities. The first one is supply some kind of game ID, and then there's callback, travel failed callback, so a way of us running a function if it falls over. Or we can just supply a game ID, and then if it fails silently. And for ease, I'm just going to go with the second option where we don't really worry about what happens if something goes wrong. But it might be worth considering that in your game. So go to game, and now we need to supply this game ID as a string. Well, how do we get hold of that game ID? So the easiest way to do this is, let's just minimize Crayta for a second. And you're going to need to use a web browser. So I'm going to get my web browser here. And I've got it open already on the game that I want to teleport to. Well, it's not actually. This is AJ's Villa. I want to teleport to one of my games. So I'll go to create.crayta.com, and the game I want to teleport to, I'll find that one. So this stop the furnace. And the code I'm looking for, the game ID I'm looking for, is this section of the URL up here. And you can find that on create.crayta.com, or if I just choose a game at random here, you can also find it there on the play.crayta.com as well. So that's what you need. You need to copy this to your clipboard. So you can use Control-C or right-click and copy. And now that's on my clipboard, let's go back to Crayta and add that game ID into our code. So just going back here. Okay. For now, let's just put it straight in the code. And so that's it. What we want to do is send it in quotes like that. And let's just test that out. So I think that I've used the one for prop hunt. Yeah, I might have done. Okay, so anyway, whatever game ID you need to use, make sure you use the correct one. And now let's press E to travel to the furnace and nothing happens. But if I open up the console, we can see still nothing has happened. This is because I haven't hooked up the teleport event. So I need to actually call this function. So in order to do that, let's go to the thing that we're going to interact with, this prompter that's invisible. And on interact, add a new binding there by clicking that plus. And whatever has got this script attached. So for me, it's this prompter, demo teleport script, and I want to teleport. And while I'm here, let me just make sure that I've got the right code. No, I didn't have the right code. Let's go to the one I want to use. Stop the furnace. Here we go. That's the code I want. Control C. Going back into here. And let's paste it in. So not that one, that one. Okay, let's try that out. So now I've hooked up the interact event to the teleport function, which I've written, and I've changed the game ID. So travel to stop the furnace, press E, nothing happens, but in the console, there we go. It says demo teleport script on line 15, sending user to game, and then it's got that game ID that I supplied. Now, because this isn't a published game, it can't automatically test that. It can tell us that that's exactly what will happen when we publish it, but it can't just send us there. And I don't really want it to, because there's still more stuff I need to do in this game before I'm ready for that to happen. But we know that it will work when it gets published because of this line here in our console. So let's kind of finish off this script. Let's make it a little bit more reusable. So I'm going to add this game ID as a property here. Name equals game ID. The type this time is string. Let's save that. Let's just go to that script. And now we have the property that's come up here now that I've saved it. And I'm just going to take that out, Control X to cut, and then paste it in there with Control V. And now that the game ID exists within this property, instead of being hard coded in between these brackets here, I can use that property to send the player to the game now. So to get hold of what's in there, I do self.properties.gameID. So that references that there. So we're getting the user and we're sending them to the game, whatever game I've put in there. Which means that now when I use the same script on a different portal, like this one over here, I can change that game ID and I can change the prompt as well. So the prompt doesn't have to say travel to stop the furnace. It can say whatever other game I choose to send the player to. Right, so let's just test that new addition works. So let's run over to our portal. If I was smarter, I would have moved the start location to directly in front of the portal so that the testing would take less time. But, you know, it's nice to run around occasionally. Press E to travel to stop the furnace. Let's open the console. Press E. There we go. Okay, so it still works, except now it's using a dynamic game ID rather than the static hard-coded one. Okay, so that's the basics behind this. Now, I did a little bit more with my teleporting. So I'm going to add my other teleport script like this. And in this one, I've added loads of effects and sounds and lots of different things in order to make things a little bit more exciting. And actually, if I revert back to the template, go over here to this template here, we can see that I've added different, teleport load effect, teleport sound, and all of that sort of stuff. Let's just see what happens when I interact with this one over here. So I'm going to essentially call that teleport function, but this is on the teleport script that I've already written. And also I've got a script on this. Cool. Let's call it the mesh swapper script. And what this does is essentially swap between two different voxel meshes. I'm looking for my voxel meshes. Game sign voxels is in 1. Game sign voxels teleport is in 2. And in the prompter, I'm just going to swap to the other mesh. I just want to explore how we started with this simple idea of the prompt and teleporting the player, which is totally fine. But now if I go over to this portal and interact, adding some effects, some sounds, that sort of thing, and at that point I would be teleporting to the other game. So the way we do that, the way we add sounds and effects to the teleportation, is I've scheduled a function and then I've started playing some sounds and effects. I do a wait so that those effects and sounds have time to sort of animate and play in front of the player. And then I make the player invisible. Player.visible equals false. I do some more. So it's kind of a two-stage thing. The first one is building up. The second one is whoosh, they're gone. And give the player a second after that whoosh, they're gone, to just realize, oh, the game world is continuing and I've disappeared from it. And then send the player to the game. And don't forget to return the game to the state it was before the player interacted. So if you're stopping sounds or turning off lights or whatever you want to do as your effects, make sure to return it for the other players, so that during that moment when the player is interacted with a teleportation or a portal, it's all about them. They're teleporting somewhere and it's exciting. And then when it's done, return the game to how it was before. And that's essentially it. I hope this has been a useful and interesting tutorial on how to get your portals up and running. If you need any help with this, don't forget our Discord is really active with lots of helpful and friendly people. So head over to the Crayta Discord if you get stuck or you want some ideas or suggestions for how to improve your portals. And I really look forward to seeing your hubs with working portals in Crayta. Oh, don't forget this hub is available to play. So head over to Tutorial Springs Hub and I'll push an update with the portals now. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in this hub in Crayta.